Welcome everyone. So in this clip we would like to set the incandescence ramp so that we could also further improvise the shading section of the explosion, plus to improvise the overall look and feel and the behavior of the simulations. We also would like to add an external field that would be the turbulence. So first I would like to add the turbulence field. So for that you need to select the fluid container and you can go inside the field solvers and can click over the turbulence. Okay. So the turbulence field will going to make it a little bit more turbulent, or you could say it will going to add some more, you can say, weightage to the overall behavior of the explosion. And it is added because just to introduce the impact of the wind or the air. How do we going to begin with the values of the turbulence field? Well, I would like to set the magnitude between somewhere around 18 to 20, and I don't need any attenuation, so we would like to put that thing to the 0. And the frequency is required to be some keys. So in the beginning we would be having a frequency of 0.7, and let's say at frame approximately 50 or let's say 60 we would like to drop it down to 0.25. Okay, so in that case the explosion will take some bigger turns. And I do have got the play blast with me, so at the end of this clip I would like to show you the play blast with the high with I would like to show you the play blast that would be the high resolutions of the fluids that has been taken somewhere around 175 resolutions at the base. So the next thing would be to decide the incandescence. This is very important graph. So you can see that these colors are indicating the values of the temperature, with the most right coordinates is indicating that the temperature values are very high. And you can see that the moment it bursts out, the temperature quickly tries to rise upward because it's quite hot. And now it's time to add some more proper color schemes to that. Since I also talked about the black body, so our graph would also be based upon those kind of colors. So I can introduce some more yellowish kind of an impact, that because the shading is extremely important section of the explosion. If you do not have the proper shading, or you could say the look and feel, then it would be really tough to get the exact feel of the explosion. So the overall color graph for that is not a problem. And obviously we do have the comping packages to further improvise all these things, so not a big issue. Alright, so and you could also go around with these values of the input bias, let's say 0.25. I mean, if you would like to increase that, but be also very careful that too much value will definitely going to kill your explosion. So that has to be really very sensitive. I will never recommend to go with the value of 0. You could play around with the value of 0.25, and now see the beautiful impact of these streaks. The streaks of the fire, as I was discussing with you also in the previous module. Now I would like to bring your kind attention towards the attribute of the temperature that is called as a tension. So with high tension value, you will going to expect a very nice flow of the fire, and that's pretty amazing. And I think so we are almost done with all the things, and it's time to show you the play blast. Now you can see that in front of me I do have got the high resolution play blast of the explosions. Here you can see that the color variations is a little bit more. The inclination towards the yellow is quite high, but that's not a problem. You can again certainly revisit the color scheme of the incandescence RAM and can play around with the base color which you want. Now you can see that at the bottom there is a very high impact, and due to the high buoyancy values of the temperature, it has quickly risen up with the help of the high simulation rate scale. And the way these colors are being getting mixed up is also due to the diffusion attribute of the temperature. And in the beginning you could see that the fire is there's a lot of fire over here, so the air to fuel ratio is also playing a lot of important role. So overall it's the collection, or you may could say the synergy of the content details like the density, velocity, turbulence, temperature, and the fuel. Plus also you need to be very careful regarding the animated values of your fluid ammeter, because the attribute density pressure threshold, or you could say the temperature pressure threshold is totally based upon the rate of the density per voxels per, you can say, second. So if you would like to add, or if you like to increase the values of the density, you also need to work with respect to the temperature, with respect to the heat, as well as the fuel. So all these things are very important while constructing impactful, or you may could say a good level of explosions. All right, so I'd like to close that thing, and I hope so that now you are done with your process. And don't just forget to increase the resolution value of the base resolution from 100 to maybe 200, or I should say 175. And before you make that decision, I always suggest you that with the value of 100, just take a play blast of 60 to 75 frames. Try to get the basics of the explosions, that whether it's giving you the appropriate results as per your expectations or not. Try to tweak down certain attributes which you feel you need to do according to your own artistic or aesthetic decisions. And then once you're satisfied with the overall behavior of the fluids, then try to appraise it. Just do not begin with very high resolutions, otherwise you would be end up with lots of frustrations, because these things are exceptionally extremely computationally heavy. So you need to pay a lot of attention before you are on your way to create some fluid dynamic stuff, especially when it comes to the explosion. Because you can see over here that the base resolution 100, and it was stopped for frame 15, I guess. This has been kept at disable evaluation, so because of that it's showing you the wrong figures of the frames. It was hardly the reaction of frame 10, or maximum I should say 15. Within 15 frame it has covered the resolutions of 92. So when it will gonna reach the value of 100, you may could simply think over that the resolutions of the X and the Z will going to land up somewhere around 360, and the Y1 will be somewhere around 400 plus value. So that's quite a high resolution kind of stuff. So for that reason, you are always required to move first with the base resolution, keeping low value of the base resolution, and then try to increase it step by step. And I also like to bring your kind attention towards the auto resize, which is playing a lot of important roles when it comes to the high impact explosions. Plus, as you know that we are already utilizing the simulation rate scale, that's quite a high value, and we also using the substeps 5. But despite of the fact we do have these two things synchronized to each other, like we do have a higher simulation rate scale, so there might be chances of fluids not to evaluate frames properly, but we have figured it out with the help of the substeps. But now another great problem is that if we do not going to utilize the auto resize attribute, then the fluid could end up with some different kind of results that might not best fit when it comes to the explosions. What happened, as you know, that if you're going to play the timeline, well, it simply means that if you do not have the proper space, since you're using a very high simulation rate scale, you are required to utilize the auto resize margins, which simply states that for the initial values of the explosions, you are giving a very high margin resizing to the overall fluid container. So I would like to take you inside this value. So from frame 1 to the 30, I've also synchronized this auto resize margin with respect to the simulation rate scale. So it simply means that in the beginning of the frames, you have quite high rooms, or you could have a lot of space to adjust your voxels. You could say high speed voxels. And then when it comes to the overall settlement of the explosions, and you also know that the simulation rate scale is also going to shrink to 0.75. So in that case, we don't require a lot of higher margin size. So what we could do in that case, we can shrink it down to 3. That would going to save your RAM, your processing, and all of that. So that's why I decided to take a look at that auto resize as well, because that's being a very important attribute. And I hope so with that thing. It's quite a big lecture, and I hope so that you are now you have completely understood the concepts of the explosions. Now it's time to move to the next module, which would be the cache of the fluids. We would like to learn the techniques and how do we going to interpret the word cache inside the fluids.